For the last 40 years, we've documented nearly 70,000 wildfires a year in the United States. So we wondered, what is a wildfire and how do we manage them? Or can we?
What a wildfire is any fire that's unplanned and uncontrolled in a natural area. But I think it is important that we draw a distinction between forest fires and prescribed fires, because there are many cases where we actually intentionally start fires in natural areas in a controlled and managed fashion. Those are called prescribed fires, and we do those to achieve ecological restoration objectives and also to reduce hazardous fuels and lower our wildfire risk.
But how do wildfires start? And why are we seeing more of them?
Well, to understand where and why wildfires emerge, first we have to understand sort of the chemistry and the physics of fire, right? So to have a fire, you really need three things. It's called the fire triangle. You have to have fuel, which is just something that can combust. You have to have oxygen, right, to fuel that combustion reaction. And then you have to have heat to help bring up that fuel to a temperature at which it can combust, right? So that's called the fire triangle: fuel, oxygen, and heat. If you've got those three things, and if you have an ignition source, then you've got a fire. In a natural area like a forest, your primary fuel type is going to be leaves and sticks and things like that.
Sounds like we've had the elements to start wildfires for a long time. But why are we seeing them more frequently now?
So it does seem like we're seeing an increase in fires, in the last few years or the last decade or so than we did previously. The underlying issue here is fuel accumulation. In many parts of North America and in many parts of the world, we are seeing unnatural levels of fuel accumulation due to a long period of lack of management. We've excluded fire. Fire is a natural process. Just as natural as this rain, just as natural as this wind, it historically occurred, it historically shaped these ecosystems. But we haven't always understood that, particularly starting in the middle of the 20th century. And so there were active efforts to exclude and suppress fire across the entire continent. And they were successful in the short term. But what happened in the long term is that those fuels that otherwise would have been burned by low intensity wildfires, well, now they've accumulated, right? And that has increased our wildfire risk. So ultimately, it's a fuels issue, again, going back to the fire triangle, but that fuels issue is compounded by a couple of different things, and one of them would be climate change, right? One aspect of the fire triangle is heat, right? And if it's hotter, if it's drier, those accumulated fuels are going to be more likely to combust. And then another thing is there's a lot of people out here. Our population is increasing, and greater population, that's more ignition sources. You've got a lot of people living in what's called the wildland-urban interface. People want to live amongst the trees adjacent to these beautiful natural areas, but now you've got an ignition source. And now you have a new fire management challenge where it's not just a fire can't just sweep across the landscape because there's a neighborhood now. It's a complicated problem, right? But at its core, it's a fuels problem, again, compounded by climate change and then an expanding wildland-urban interface.
Clemson's answer is that wildfires start when you have fuel, oxygen, heat, and an ignition source. Due to lack of fire management, we have a buildup of those excess natural fuels. A warming climate makes those fuels hotter and drier, and an increase in human population means there are more ignition sources near the accumulated fuels. That's what makes us more prone to experiencing wildfires today. What are you curious about? Drop a comment below to let us know what questions Clemson faculty should answer next. If you enjoyed this video and want to see similar content, don't forget to like and subscribe.